Cue in, okay? All right. All right, we're almost there. I got to share it one time here. Okay, good evening, Naples community, and welcome to week 6 of this community forum. It's hard for me to fathom that these forums began 6 weeks ago and that our state has been engaged in coping with the concerns and mitigation issues of COVID-19 for a full 57 days. I'd like to thank you all for attending, engaging, and sharing your feedback as we move through this issue. It's a pleasure to introduce our panelists this evening. Please join me in welcoming Jennifer Emmons, RN and Executive Director of Hospice House here in Naples. While Jennifer normally provides us with updates to social distancing and sanitary protocols, I'm hoping that we've reached the point where most of this information is ingrained in everything we do by now. Reinforcing the message is certainly critical to ensuring the safety and well-being of our entire community, especially as we begin to consider strategies for reopening of the economy, both on the state and local level. But it's equally critical to understand what this pandemic looks like through the eyes of a healthcare professional on the front lines of this issue each and every day. Jennifer will offer us just such a perspective this evening. Please also welcome Melissa Andalero, Naples Central School psychologist. Issues such as stress, anxiety, depression, and the like are natural byproducts of unusual circumstances and difficult times. Ms. Andalero will be discussing these issues and how we might address and cope with them. On to state and local developments. The New York State on-pause executive order was modified yesterday primarily to allow licensed pharmacists to administer COVID-19 and antibody testing. Testing is scheduled to begin in phases with a focus on frontline and essential workers. All updates to executive orders are available at www.governor.ny.gov. Please click on the link labeled Executive Orders. According to the New York State Department of Health, there were 288,045 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the state of New York as of this morning, 51,000 more than a week ago. The total number of deaths is reported at 16,966, including 367 lives lost overnight. The total number of new cases continues to trend downward, with newly reported cases as of this morning totaling 1,000. For specific New York State tracking information, please visit www.covid19tracker, the number 19, again, www.covid19tracker.health.ny.gov. As of 3 o'clock p.m. this afternoon, Ontario County Public Health is reporting 91 confirmed cases, 10 hospitalized, 71 in quarantine or isolation, and sadly, 9 lives lost. To view specific Ontario County information, please visit www.co.ontario.ny.us/101/public-health. Locally, essential services only are maintained at the present time. General services will resume as soon as it is deemed safe and responsible to do so. Village and town buildings remain closed to public traffic until further notice. Contact information for each specific department is posted on all municipal building doors. Alternatively, you can contact the town clerk's office via email at Joanne, Joanne, at naplesny.us, or by phone at 585-374-2111. To reach the village clerk's office via email, please reach out to Megan, Megan, at naplesny.us, or call 585-374-2435. Please leave an email or a voicemail message. Your inquiry will be responded to as quickly as possible. Please also recognize the many efforts in place to ensure that our basic needs and other areas of concern are being met. The Naples Open Cupboard, open on Saturdays from 11 to 2 p.m. The Naples Rotary Responders, available to assist with grocery shopping or other basic needs at 607-664-6385. And the new website created to serve as a central point for information related to economic relief efforts and business resources at www.naplesmeansbusiness.com. Again, www.naplesmeansbusiness.com, and so many others mentioned before. Our community is doing a great job at recognizing the need for social distancing and heightened sanitary protocols. As we will soon begin discussing the strategy for reopening our economy locally and on the state level, please understand that this is not the time to become complacent. Please continue to practice these protocols. I'd like to remind everyone that Hospice House has generously donated their RN and executive director to aid in the COVID-19 response effort on the front lines. This organization has been seriously impacted financially, as they are a not-for-profit care facility and they rely solely on private donations and fundraising activities. Jennifer joins us from Saddle River, New Jersey, and tonight she'd like to share her observations from one of the largest hospitals in the country. Jennifer, thank you for being with us again. And look, tell us how this came to be, you traveling to New Jersey to serve in an area of most critical need, and some of the things you've witnessed and dealt with over the past week.
Well, we'll start with how this came to be. So the way that Hospice House runs its daily operations, a lot of people don't realize that we're not a medical facility. We don't receive insurance reimbursement. We provide all of our services for free. So when this pandemic, started really ramping up, when we saw that things were going to be much different, it seemed like our usual daily operations almost ceased overnight. One of the things that we had to look at, as you've heard me talking for the last 6 weeks about our high-risk population and keeping people at home, Hospice House runs primarily by volunteers providing that care to our residents and their families. We had to pull our volunteers out of Hospice House for many safety reasons. Not being a medical facility, we don't have access to PPE like what some of the hospitals do, and we know that there's a national shortage anyways. So that really left us operating a bit differently. We do still have a family at Hospice House, and we are very fortunate. I have a wonderful group of staff that we're able to keep them in. The family decided that they would shelter in place at the house. We really had to think outside the box on how we were going to do what was best for everybody. So I know that family watches us. So I want to say hi to them and let you know that I miss you guys, and say thank you to my staff, because my staff are able to keep that place running tip top while I am away. One thing that we know is that we are not going to be able to accept admissions like many of the other comfort care homes right now, simply because it may not be safe to do so. It wouldn't be safe to bring residents into our home. It wouldn't be safe to ask our volunteers to come back in until some of this coronavirus, until we have some more answers. So when we knew that it may be a little while, we talked with some of the other comfort care homes. I talked with some of the other directors. We all were discussing how do we do this? When do we do this? Some of the other homes that are a little more established, they have staff that Hospice House doesn't. The way that Hospice House runs right now, those volunteers provide care from 8 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock at night. We only have paid staff from 8 o'clock at night until 8 o'clock in the morning, and that's one person either on a 4-hour shift. Sometimes they work a 12-hour shift. We're not in a place financially that we can hire a whole bunch of staff and ask them to come in to fill those other 12 hours. So, you know, that's just one of the reasons that we have to be very careful about when we're going to be able to accept admissions. That's how our daily operations have changed a little bit. The other thing that we have to look at is this is a time of year that we have our most major fundraisers because we rely on the donations that the community provides to us and on our fundraisers. We don't get state or government aid. At this point, we're not receiving any grants. So it really truly is whatever our community and beyond gives to us. So our Monte Carlo is postponed at this point. We're certainly not saying canceled. The Canandaigua Lake Trout Derby is one of our major fundraisers that has had to be canceled. So we really are looking at our budget, and you know, we just started to be able to share with the community that it costs Hospice House $550 a day to keep those doors open and to continue to operate. So having our major fundraisers canceled or postponed has really put us in even more of a financial difficulty, like many of the other nonprofits. We're all navigating this together and we're all trying to figure it out. What we do know is that we would not survive without our community. And that's how I kind of got here in these community forums. Brian, you and I worked a lot to say, how can Hospice House give back to our community? So that's where we started, you know, with how do we put on a mask and what do we do? And just really being present in our community, because I didn't need to be inside of Hospice House quite as much as what I do when we're operating normally.
Yeah, can I add something to that, Jennifer, if you don't mind?
Sure.
So, I mean, you know, on that note, because I don't want to let this go without bringing this up at least another time. I did mention this last week. First of all, I want to thank you for reiterating Hospice House and their needs, and the fact that this discussion took place where you decided to go to the area of most critical need. But at the same time, I think it's important that our community really recognize what a valuable service that Hospice House provides for hospice care here in Naples. And I'd like to ask folks, again, the need is there for support. And if anybody in our community or beyond is able to consider making a financial contribution to Hospice House, please do so. The address to mail a donation to is P.O. Box 343, Naples, New York 14512, or alternatively through the website at www.hospicehouse.org. And again, if you're able, please consider ensuring that this vital service remains in the Naples community. Jennifer, we
Thanks
do
for
have a
that.
question, and I didn't mean to cut you off because I really
Yeah,
want to
that's
know
okay.
about some of the things that you're experiencing there on the front lines.
Yeah.
But there was a question that I didn't want to let go, and that comes from Patrick. And he was asking how many in Naples have COVID-19. And I assume the question really means how many are tested positive, and do we know that number? I do. Are you aware of that number, Jennifer?
I'm not aware of the
Yeah.
current number in Naples because I haven't
Yeah.
been able to keep up with those numbers like I normally can.
So yeah, the number tested positive and confirmed as being positive is 2 in our community. That being said, I think we have to also recognize that there are a number of assumed positives, at least a dozen, in the Naples community. And the reason they're not counted as confirmed is because they simply haven't been tested. They are well enough to recover at home. But again, they're assumed as positive and contact traced as such. And I think that's important. And again, I keep coming back to this every time this question is asked. Knowing that, knowing what those numbers are, I would have to ask everybody in the community, everybody watching, when you know that, or you know that your neighbor or somebody down the street or 2 blocks over is tested positive for COVID-19, what would you do differently that you're not already doing? What precautions would you take? And I hope you don't have an answer for that, because if you don't have an answer for that question, that means I hope that you're doing the right things already. You're already taking necessary precautions. So in essence, what I'm really driving at here is, does it matter really, knowing what that number is? I would assume not if we're taking necessary precautions. And that's really all I wanted to add about that. If there's either of you that would like to add to that, please do so. I do want to ask Jennifer about her experiences. Is anything else that we want to add to that statement?
Not to that statement.
Okay. So yeah, Jennifer, and I didn't mean to cut you off with
No,
the
that's okay.
hospice
That's kind of
house.
how I ended up
Yeah.
here. You know, it was heartbreaking to us as we sat and we listened to, you know, the same thing that everybody else is hearing on the news, that people are dying alone, that they can't be with their families. If you haven't experienced hospice house, that and hospice care in general, that's the exact opposite of how we believe that it should be. We want everybody to be around if they're able. We want family to be with each other. So when we realized that we're not going to be able to continue to provide that service for a very temporary time, we decided to think outside the box and figure out how can we take what we do at hospice house and take it outside of hospice house. And it was decided that hospice house would bring what we do to the area most in need, which is the New York metropolitan area right now. So here I am in New Jersey. I am.
Oh, so what's it like? I think the community should really know, what are some of the things you're seeing? And I know, I recognize that some of what you could feed back to us probably isn't great news, right? But I think it's important that people understand, and maybe hear it from you being on the front lines. What are some of the things that you're experiencing?
Um, well, I last worked on Friday, so I worked Friday evening. I can take you through just a little bit of how that shift went. I am in a position at this hospital that I'm actually an assistant director of nursing. Um, I'm kind of helping to oversee this entire hospital. It's a very large hospital. Um, so when I arrived for my shift on Friday, I think it's important to know that Friday was actually my first real true shift working, as we call it. You know, the week leading up to that, yes, I was at the hospital, but it was a lot of orientation, learning the hospital itself. My shift started at 3 o'clock on Friday, and by not quite 7 o'clock, I had been called to 7 codes, meaning no pulse, no breathing. It was throughout all areas of the hospital. Some of it was in long-term care, some of it was in ICU, some of it was on their dedicated COVID unit. Unfortunately, those did not, they're what we call unsuccessful. I have to be honest, it's not all older people with other health concerns. It is not, it's all over the board. It's, I certainly knew what I was walking into, but to have it right in front of my face and to see, all of those numbers don't matter anymore. I was really focused and concerned working with you, Brian, on watching the numbers and are they going up and are they going down and are they being reported accurately? And if this were your mom or your child that I had to pick up the phone and tell you they were no longer with us, and maybe you didn't even know that they were decompensating. We see on the news that maybe families know that their loved one is COVID positive and they're in the hospital because they were not doing well, and then maybe they had to go on a ventilator. And you can see where we try to FaceTime. We know that families can't be together right now. So these doctors and these nurses and these CNAs and everybody that's involved are all working really hard to let families at least say their goodbyes. And I have to tell you that two of these folks on Friday, it was in less than an hour that they went from walking around and talking like you and I. Maybe they just needed a little bit of oxygen support. They were feeling a little short of breath, and within an hour, they were no longer living. So, we keep preaching about staying home, and I don't want to stay home either. I don't want to stay in this hotel room. I want to be able to see my family. I knew that I was going to be here for 8 weeks. I wanted to be able to say goodbye to my family and to hug them. But we can't do that because I know that, I'm not that far away. I'm 5 hours away. I can get in my car and I can go home and I can, see Hayden and I can see Noah and I can see my granddaughter, but I'm not safe to them right now. And if we know that somebody is immune compromised, if we know that we shouldn't be going around somebody, please don't, because picking up the phone and calling a family member and telling them that their loved one died and they didn't even get the chance to be able to FaceTime in, or to say those goodbyes or to have us hold up the phone. It's just, it's not something that any of us can really wrap our heads around.
So these things can happen much more quickly than we really are grasping, because this seems to be relatively new, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of our understanding, at least locally. I think we have the impression that somebody falls ill, maybe they're at home recovering, maybe they go to hospital, and there's this lengthy period. But what you're seeing is that's not necessarily always the case, and sometimes it's quite rapid. Is that correct?
Right. I think, the biggest thing to let people know would be that we don't know anything about this damn disease. We don't, we're learning as we're seeing it. I don't know if in New York, I really have to kind of keep the news off at this point because I'm dealing with it every day. So I don't know if you guys have heard. What I'm seeing is that we have this whole group of people now that they presented with pink eye. That was never on the list of symptoms. I get a lot of people reaching out to me saying, well, I heard that now this is a symptom and that is a symptom. We don't know. And it's that simple. We really just don't know. I just don't want everybody to believe everything that they see on the news and to try to interpret that and look at those numbers. We're all hearing the curve is flattening, and it is. New York City is actually sending us help. I have a great team of ICU nurses that just came from from New York City. But we're still seeing hundreds of people die. Here in this county, in Bergen County, on Tuesday, they saw their highest death toll as of yet. So when you're seeing, admissions are down, sure, admissions are down, but then we kind of see these waves where maybe these folks have been in the hospital and they are those ones that you see on TV. They decompensate over time, and then they die. But we do have this group of folks that it's not always like that. I mean, if you could just put yourself in somebody else's shoes, or we're not trying to keep anybody locked up in their homes by any means. And if we are, it's because we need to be. So we're going to get to the point where we start to see things open back up. And I think we'll have that conversation in the future. But there are ways that you need to do this smart. You go outside, please, and keep yourself happy and your mental health up, and take a walk and make these memories with your children, and do all of the things that we normally would do. We just have to do it a little bit differently right now. And have some empathy, because you're not going to care what the news said to you when we pick up the phone and we call you and tell you that it's your mom or your aunt or your dad that is the one who is now no longer with you, because you're not going to care what number they are at that point. You're just going to care that they were your mom or your dad.
Right. So, and I want to come back to and maybe talk a little bit more about some of these experiences. I think this might be a perfect segue into talking with Melissa and engaging her into the conversation. With all these issues and stressors in mind, it seems fitting that we discuss the concerns related to stress and uncertainty. And I know that I personally feel anxiety. I feel it a lot, anxiety and stress. Most people that know me probably know me as having a little bit of a short temper to begin with. That's pretty much prevalent on a regular basis these days. I'm self-aware. I get that. I understand that that's occurring, but it's still, I'm willing to admit that I feel those pressures too, and that stress and that anxiety. So the question becomes, how do we best recognize and address those issues? And for the community, please join me in welcoming Melissa Andaloro, NCS high school psychologist. And Melissa, thank you for joining us and being willing to discuss these sometimes really sensitive issues.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Brian. And I want to say thank you, Jennifer, again. I know you as a mom and as a person. I just know you're doing incredible work, and we can't thank you enough for what you're doing, both in Naples and outside of Naples. And really quickly, just want to talk about and piggyback off of something you're talking about, is that perspective. You had a different perspective being in Naples, where you have maybe a handful of confirmed cases, to being in kind of the thick of it. And I think that's part of what's hard about this situation. I think that's what a lot of people are struggling with. And I know I go back and forth sometimes too, where I get frustrated about certain situations. I'm getting frustrated about not being able to see my kids that I work with at school, and my families, because I know they're struggling. And then it takes something like actually experiencing it and having it hit home and hit you in a personal way for you to really have that perspective. And one of the things I'm going to ask people to do is to try to have that perspective maybe without having that experience. And that's hard, but it is important. And it's the same thing as when we try to teach our kids empathy in school. You think about someone else's shoes, being in someone else's shoes, and be thankful for the fact that we don't have those personal stories right now, because we know that they're out there. There's 50,000 of those out there, and we should be very thankful that if you're at home and you're just frustrated about the fact that you can't go to work, or that you can't see your niece or your nephew or your kids, that it's not because someone's dead. And that perspective and that frame of mind is a piece of what I wanted to kind of talk about today. But I did want to just kind of talk about a little bit about how to approach that kind of anxiety and depression that you might be seeing in others. and kind of start there too, because I think for me, it's been a struggle being far away and dealing with crisis with students and families. And I live in Rochester, so I'm an hour away, so it's even more frustrating because it's limited, right? You know, in Naples, I'm sure people felt in the past you can just pop up and go to a friend's house if you're worried about them. And I think given the situation, you want to be aware of maybe some warning signs, both in yourself, but in people you care about too, that you're touching base with. If you start to notice that someone's kind of having a real change in personality, maybe they're giving away things or just kind of expressing that general hopelessness, it's probably out of your realm of comfort to give them that support and go to bed at night, right? Like the thing I tell my students is I got to be able to sleep tonight. I got to know you're safe. And if you're ever worried that someone isn't in a good spot, do not hesitate to call 911 to have someone do a wellness check. You know, I tell my students, you can be mad at me all you want, but I'd rather you be safe than not here. And then we can work through you being mad at me. Most of the time, those people want help. But the fun part about mental health is people sometimes have a hard time asking for it. So you might save someone's life. You might be doing them a favor. You know, don't hesitate to reach out for help in that area, because I think that's a lot for people to handle. And there is a lot going on. People's daily lives are being impacted, their economic stance, socially, their health, emotionally, that sense of control, that routine. A lot of those things have been taken away. And that's why you see these spikes during times of crisis with the stress, with anxiety, and with depression. You know, we're kind of made to have that fight, flight, freeze response to be adaptive and to survive. You know, if a lion's chasing us, unfortunately, it's not a lion, and it's not something that's right in front of us necessarily. So that's where I think we see some of that frustration coming out. In terms of what you can do, there's a lot of things, right? So part of it is that perspective piece. A lot of times when I'm working with depression and anxiety in schools and with families, it's about being able to recognize how you're thinking about things, being aware of what you're thinking. So an example would be that it could be very easy for me to sit at home and go, oh, you know what, I really was looking forward to going to see my relatives this weekend, or I really wanted to go to that concert. And that's going to make me feel a certain way if I think that way. It's going to make me feel disappointed. It's going to make me feel more depressed. Okay, maybe a little bit irritated. And then I might act in a way that kind of goes with that feeling. So maybe I'll have one or two more cocktails than I normally would. Maybe I'll get in a fight with my husband because now I'm irritable and he did something weird that I don't like. And it kind of goes in a cycle. The only thing you really can control in that sense is how you're thinking about things. So to flip it back, instead of thinking, oh, I really wanted to go to that concert, gosh, you know, I'm so lucky to have the opportunity to be able to go to those things. And I know I'm going to be able to go to other concerts in the future if I'm healthy. That's probably going to help me feel more positive, maybe more relaxed. I might still be a little disappointed, and that's okay. It's okay to have some negative emotions, but if you can kind of monitor how you're thinking about things, that's usually the first step. And it sounds like it should be easy, but it's not. And I wish I had an easy button. I always tell people that. I wish I had an easy button for dealing with emotions, and I just don't. I have skills and tools that you can practice. So if you find yourself kind of thinking about things in a negative way, you know, maybe catch yourself doing it, write it down, and see if you can flip that thought into something more positive. I think that's a good place to start. It does take work and effort to do it, and you have to be motivated to want to change. So I wish I could get into everyone's brains and tell them that this is important stuff, and it's not just for COVID and this situation. These are things that'll help you every day. Yes, Brian?
Oh, so I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's okay.
A second here. Okay, I hope that feedback is gone. So I need to ask
I have a question for Melissa.
Sure.
Would you be able to touch on the isolation piece? Because I have to say that's something, you know, I certainly knew what I was walking into, and I would do this all over again in a heartbeat. You know, it's not all doom and gloom. There's wonderful positives of this too, but that's been something that for me, you know, I'm a very social person. And even though we were sheltering in place, I had Hayden around me. I had, you know, my dog at home. And this is very, very different. And I went into it thinking, okay, I'm going to video chat with my granddaughter and I'm going to do all of these different things. But living it is so much different than trying to prepare yourself for it. I know that, you know, there's these long shifts, and I come home back to this hotel room and there's nobody here. It's totally empty. And there's a lot of folks in our community that live by themselves. And I know for me, I was so excited to, hey, it's Sunday at 7 o'clock. You know, these community members will get on and they'll wave and they'll say hello. This is the connection that we have right now. And it's not the same, but what about the folks that are living at home and they're isolated, they're all by themselves? What are some things that we can do when we're sitting in a room with nobody around us to try to
Well, it depends on what means you have to access. So like even today, like as I'm sitting upstairs getting ready this morning, like I heard a bunch of cars driving around the neighborhood and honking horns, and I saw birthday candles on someone's lawn. So I'm assuming that there was a birthday. So, you know, if you know someone's alone, plan to do something fun. That's one of the things I was going to talk about, is do something for the community, do something for someone, and that can give such a sense of positivity for yourself. It sounds selfish to do something for you, for someone else, but it can help you feel better to like go and support a local business, donate to Hospice House, you know, buy something from a local artisan, you know, support a small business, make a drive-by, to wave at someone through a window. There's things you can do even if you can't see people, and go into their home. And I think about the fact that even without a quarantine, people who are depressed often isolate themselves to begin with. And so that's really challenging, because a lot of times people don't realize that they're starting to do that. They might not be aware that they're in that kind of funk. So for you, the fact that you're already have that awareness of, oh, wow, this kind of sucks and I need to do something differently, that might not be something that people notice. And that's where it is important to reach out to people that you know might be struggling or were struggling prior to this, or you know that they have hardships going on right now. That would be my best bet, is to reach out to those people and try to think of something nice and fun you can do. There's like a whole group on Facebook of people that are delivering wine to like different providers' houses and nurses, and just random people who are struggling. And I find if I scroll through that versus the news, I feel a lot better about the world. And I think that's a big piece of it too, is that screen time and what you're focusing on. So I would say to the people who are alone, don't sit on your phone reading the news all day. You know, try to do something that feels good for you. And that looks different for everyone. And it's not always easy when you're by yourself. You know, I'm very grateful. My dog drives me crazy, but he gets me up and out because I have to take him out to walk a few times a day. I don't know how different my mood would be if I didn't have that. So, you know, if you have certain things at your disposal, use them. You know, if you can walk, go take a walk. Don't sit on the couch absorbed into those negative thoughts. It kind of goes back to that whole, you can get stuck in that cycle real quick. And it is hard to get out of, especially if you don't have that skill to be able to pull yourself out and be able to be self-aware enough to go, what am I doing for myself right now? Is this helping me? You know, I have a husband, I have pets. I'm very thankful for that, even when they all drive me crazy sometimes. But, you know, for the people that don't, those are the people that need other people to reach out to them and to help them in whatever way they can. And it does look different. You know, it's not going to be that you pick up a bottle of wine and stop at their house and drink with them, but maybe you can pick it up and drop it off on their porch and talk to them through the door. So there is options. You know, for you, I think you shared prior to getting on the call today that someone left that wonderful shirt for you outside your door. Maybe you can speak to a little bit about what that did for you.
You know, Before I came, I was watching on the news where, the fire trucks drive through and people clap and they thank the healthcare workers. And I had this feeling of, oh, isn't that so nice? I have a much different perspective on that now. So just the fact that I opened my door and there's a note that says thank you. I'm in a hotel that we're all healthcare workers. So nobody knows who it is behind that door, but you mentioned a couple of things that we're focusing on here, trying to keep each other healthy. We're fortunate to be in a very nice part of New Jersey, so we're able to go for those walks. And I was sitting outside on Saturday morning with a couple of my other nurse managers. We're masked and we're sitting that 6, 8 or more feet apart. They're monitoring it very closely here in New Jersey, as they should be. And all of a sudden we heard all these sirens and these horns, and these folks are driving through and they're saying thank you. And my perspective went from, oh, isn't that so nice of them to thank the healthcare workers, to I'm not sure if I can really put it into words or describe it, but just to know that people are aware. We're here, we're doing this, we are working really, really hard. And it's not just me down here in New Jersey. I mean, we have phenomenal nurses right there in Naples that are frontline workers. You don't have to be a healthcare worker to be a frontline worker. If you know that somebody is out there working every single day, and just know that they're probably struggling, because I know you mentioned the word angry. I've gotten angry the last few days, which my kids will tell you this isn't true, but that's usually not me. I've gotten angry at the silliest things, and I tend to snap, and I want to say something really nasty on Facebook, like, do you have any idea that, where people are dying around us? And I can't imagine working in the gas station and working in the grocery store and dealing with that every day, and not having somebody say thank you. So that's huge for me, that I opened my door and that there was a note that said thank you, and a shirt left there, or that the fire trucks drive through. My sister is having my niece and nephew draw me pictures, and she's going to mail them. So take that's something that maybe seemed a little silly before, and shower people with the happy, because I know that we need it. We need it a lot.
Yeah, positive feelings or positive reactions, I think, are important. Melissa, I want to share a story, because you talked about self-awareness and being aware of how we react to things. And I want to share something that, and this goes back several years ago, but it was a personal experience. I was driving down the road and somebody stepped right out off the curb in front of me. I had to slam on my brakes, swerve. And of course, my initial reaction is going to be, maybe it should not have been, but my initial reaction was anger. What the hell are you thinking, right? And I pulled over. I got out of the car and approached them and realized they were blind. All right. So, I mean, and to have that, uh, how fast you change your perspective, right? When you realize that there was an underlying reason that occurred, not because, hey, you're a jerk and you just stepped right out in front of me. It was something that, for certain reasons, was unavoidable. And actually, I hope that story sticks with people. I feel like a jerk, actually, for that having occurred, but it occurred, and my reaction was wrong. But I hope that story sticks with people, because maybe next time some emergent thing like that occurs, we don't react so quickly, or at least so quickly in a negative way. And again, I guess it's about being self-aware, and I'm glad you brought that up. I do want to ask you another question, though. With this is really stressful for a lot of people, and it's something that none of us have experienced. I'm sure we've all had really difficult experiences in our life, but probably nothing even close to this, right? So, in some ways, is this not a sort of mourning not mourning for the loss of a person necessarily. Some folks are going through that, I'm sure, and I know that. But is it maybe perhaps some of the process of mourning for what used to be, what used to be normal? Do you think that's maybe an accurate assessment of what some people are feeling?
It could definitely be part of it. I think people struggle with a lack of control in general. And this is a huge loss of control for everyone. And I think it's easy to show anger. It's a lot harder to show the other feelings that are maybe underneath that anger. And I say that all the time to my students because I don't want to genderize, but a lot of my boys that I work with, very easy for them to show that they're angry. It's a lot harder for them to show that maybe they're a little scared. Maybe they were a little embarrassed about something that happened in class. And I think there's a lot of fear that's driving some of the anger that we're seeing. And I think the hard part with that is that nothing really positive comes from anger. But if you really start to think about and be aware of what is driving my response right now, like, why am I getting so angry reading this post? You know, why am I so pissed about not being able to go to the store without a mask? Maybe taking the time to even have that conversation with yourself might help you be able to think about, okay, well, what can I do? Like if I really am upset about something, or I'm worried that I'm going to lose this, or that I'm not going to be able to go back to work, you know, well, what can I do? And I think sometimes people just get stuck with being angry. And it's easy to be angry and blame other people than look into ourselves and go, what can I do? What can I do differently? Um, because anger is not, spreading anger doesn't solve a problem. I think we have to be more mindful about how we can make change if that's what we want, how we can do that in a way that's going to be helpful for people and not hurtful. You know, I think about Jen on the front lines, and I'm certainly not anywhere near that. So my experience is a lot different, but I still have respect for what she's doing, and I'm still going to hold her in my heart and in my mind when I'm going out in public, because even though I don't have anyone, actually that's not true. My sister was told she had some sort of case of it, but she was not tested again because she could recover at home. But you know, I think about my parents. I know I'm healthy and I think I would be fine, but I think about my mom and my dad. And again, it's just that perspective. So instead of getting angry about the fact that I can't do my job the way I want to, I think about what can I do? And I make sure to take care of myself and allow myself to experience these emotions, but then work through them in a way that's going to do something positive or help me be productive. So like I said, my big thing has been supporting any business that I can. My wedding photographer from last year, I finally did my wedding album. I got some hot honey here from Patrick Sebald. Thanks, Patrick. Local businesses up here in Rochester, restaurants, things like that. I don't know. I just feel like there's so much anger, and that's not helpful. You can have that emotion, but think of how to process through it. Maybe think about where else that emotion is coming from, and then go from there.
Yeah, that's great information. You know, I asked a couple of times, we had a couple of questions from the community that we've addressed. Most of what's coming from the community, and I don't know if either one of you are monitoring this, there are kudos sending out to both Melissa and Jennifer for everything that you're doing. And people are happy to have you engaged here tonight, Melissa. Again, I did ask a couple of times for any further questions from the community, but while we wait for that, I mean, Jennifer, are there other experiences that you wanted to share from the front lines? I guess I'm just going to call it that. That's what it is, right? Experiences from the front.
You know, like I said, I certainly don't want anybody to think that it, you know, oh gosh, she had no idea what she was getting herself into, and now, you know, it sounds terrible. I certainly did, and like I said, I would do it all over again. It is not all negative. There are some real positives as well, and so those are the things that we try to focus on. You know, I go for a walk and there's these wonderful signs, and I don't know much about this area. I'm assuming that it's this little tiny area that I'm walking in, because my oldest son Noah has told me not to venture out too far. Thank you, Noah. But when I go for a walk, these people obviously know that I don't live here. I don't belong in their community, and they immediately say thank you. And everybody is really supportive. There's a grocery store that's less than a mile away that they've been fantastic. To be able to walk into this hospital and have the staff at this hospital that they're exhausted. They have been doing this for a long time, and to have them be so welcoming and say to us, anything you need, any question that you have. I have to say, the hotel that I'm in, what their staff is doing here is phenomenal. Everybody is just so very supportive. Those are the positives. Another positive was I responded to a call that somebody was having some issues down on what is their detox unit. And the way that situation resolved itself, and to be able to, like I said, take what we do at Hospice House and bring it out further, to be able to share that with other people. Those are the positives. The way that some of these could be really negative situations end up, I have to say that's what would make me do it all over again. Being really thankful for our community. I know that, a lot of people have asked me, well, do you have the proper PPE? And that one's difficult to answer. Noah was able to walk into Reynoldson's, so we're supporting a local business that way. He was able to buy, some of the sanitizer that they carry there. Thank you so much, Renee, because I can't come close to finding anything like it here. Noah was able to then go to Wilcox and give me some safety glasses that are going to help me in a couple of different situations. And then he was able to go to the post office and say, I need some help. My mom is in New Jersey and I need to get the stuff to her. So just to be able to still support those local businesses, I don't know if you can see behind me, but certainly support Arbor Hill as well. I came with their products. And I'm able to take all of what we have and what we have access to in our own local community and now share it with these other nurses that I'm in this hotel with. We were able to sit outside on the patio and have coffee as soon as it gets a little bit warmer. We plan on sitting outside, and I can't wait to introduce them to some of our local Finger Lakes region wines. Those nurses, when that package gets here from my son, those nurses are now going to be able to put some of the sanitizer in a spray bottle and be able to spray their shoes down. So they're helping to keep themselves safe. So those are the positives, and it's still coming from our community, and I'm really thankful for that.
So we've got a couple of things coming in. One is a comment that I really want to share for everybody to hear, and another one is a question. And Tracy writes, this is not a question, but this forum was a rough one tonight. And Jen's story brought tears to my eyes. And thank you, Melissa, for your input. I wanna say something. And Melissa, please let me know if I'm on the right track here. That is okay, right? That is okay to have those emotions and let them out, right?
Oh, 100%. Even the negative ones. Like, I don't want people to think that I'm telling them that everything is rainbows and butterflies. But there's things that you can do and ways that you can think to make things better and help you feel better. But you still have those feelings, and it's okay to acknowledge and validate those feelings. But then what? So, I feel the same way. Hearing Jen talk, I know her kids. So I know that she is an important part of their life, and I worry, and I try to keep my anxiety under control in the short time that we've been talking. But it's okay to have those feelings, and we're human, And it doesn't mean that they're just magically going to stop. It's just about how we deal with them is what makes all the difference. What you do for yourself to help you feel better, you know, that you're okay for asking for help when you need it, that you can have a good cry and either on the phone with someone, or if you have someone at home with you, that they're there with you to support you through that. You're human just like the rest of us, and we're all going through this, and we're all experiencing it in different ways. And that's okay.
Great. Yeah. Um, Absolutely agree. Angela had a question, and um, I think Melissa, maybe you want to take this one. It's out of my wheelhouse, but I agree with her. She says, how can we help our Naples High School seniors celebrate this graduation and senior year? Such a milestone, and I feel heartbroken for them. So there's that emotion, right? And okay, what can we do positive on top of that? I don't know. Do you have do you have a thought? I know that there's some ideas out there floating, but maybe you want to take that one on.
I wish I had a perfect answer for that. I'm older than I look right now. You know, Zoom has a nice feature where you can like soften up your appearance, but it's been a while since I've been in high school, but I know that I don't think there's any perfect replacement for this. It's something that they're going to be able to tell their kids, like, oh yeah, I didn't have prom, but this is what I did do. I know I saw like, oh, what's his name? Don Krasinski or something. He did like a virtual prom for people. He's a famous actor. He was on The Office, and he did like a virtual prom for people here in East Rochester where I live. There's signs in seniors' lawns that says ER senior, and it has their name, 2020. I would love to see some sort of parade go through, like cars drive by the neighborhoods to just honk their horns at some of those seniors. Maybe they can be in their front lawn. I don't know. It's just so different. And I've had some of my seniors express that kind of grief. You know, that is a grief. Like that is dealing with some sort of grief. You know, and just talking through it and knowing that this isn't permanent, and they'll do something for them, right? Like there's got to be something we can do for these kids. And I don't have the perfect answer, but I know there's got to be something that we can do for them, because I know we're all hurting for them, and we want to be able to celebrate their accomplishments. I mean, one of my students in particular wanted to drop out 2 years ago, and we've been talking about her graduating for the last 2 years, and now she's like, Steenberg, because she won't call me Andaloro. Steenberg, why why is this happening? This isn't fair. I should have just dropped out. I'm like, no, don't say that. You know, but I think part of that again is just that sense of community, and that's why I love Naples, is that I know something's going to happen. I just don't know what it's going to look like.
I tend to agree with that. Naples is not about to let this slide. so something somewhere along the line is going to happen. So I agree with you with the point. Nobody's really sure what, but again, this community is not going to let that slide. I think too many people care too much for others, really, and they want to recognize that. I'm not seeing any other questions or comments. Lots of kudos for both you, Jennifer, and Melissa, both of you. And Roger joined us again and wanted to shout out to his sister, who is Naples, a Neapolitan, Melanie Little Fletcher, who is an RN out in Pennsylvania. So yes, hello and thank you, Melanie. Anything else from either one of you at this point? Are either of you monitoring the feed? Am I missing anything?
I'm afraid if I put it up, it's going to make all sorts of noise.
It might backfeed. Yes, I have that technical issue pretty much every week.
Okay. I would just say that my big piece of advice is just the self-care, be aware, and just be monitoring and mindful of like how much you're watching the news and scrolling through your Facebook and Instagram, like, or TikTok if you're really cool. You know, just be aware of how much you're doing that stuff, and try to balance it with doing some different things, like being outside when it's not gross out, if it ever stops snowing, some sort of art form, baking, doing something nice for someone. Just try try to limit that screen time as much as possible. And even if you're not in school, my email's on the school website. If you ever need anything, just don't hesitate to shoot me an email.
Awesome. How about you, Jennifer? Anything else?
No, I don't think so. I know, you know, you had touched on it, Brian. This was different. You don't usually see me emotional, I guess. I try to cover that up, and I know I was talking with Melissa and Brian just prior to going live, and I said I'm not prepared. I'm usually prepared. You know, my anxiety is way up here over some stuff that had happened over the weekend with scheduling, and I thought that, you know, it was important for my community to kind of see
The real you?
yeah. I mean, I did try to cover up some of the bruising from the masks and things like that, and finally I said, you know what, I don't care. So I don't mean to bring tears to people's eyes, but I think it's important. So thank you, Tracy, for mentioning something along the lines of, you know, it brought tears to your eyes. I certainly don't want to make anybody sad, but I think that we get so caught up in believing everything that we see, and I just wanted everybody to know that it's not always that easy. So have some empathy, and I pray every day that those folks in our Naples community don't have to be like one of the families down here, because Hospice House can't bring you in right now, and you won't be able to be with your family. So I can't wait until Hospice House can be opened up again, and we don't have to be in such a tragedy.
We'll get there. I'm sure we'll get there. Anything else from either of you? Well, I have to say it's been a pleasure, and the format switched up a little bit this week. I think it was really successful. It was more of a back and forth discussion, and I think we want to continue on doing it in this fashion and inviting the public, to our viewers, to chime in with their questions as we're moving along. I think it makes for a much more fluid format, and that's really why we do this, right? We do this to allow for that that back and forth conversation with the whole community, and I think it's been successful. So once again, anything else that either of you two would like to add?
Brian, I did forget to mention. Oh.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, I miss you guys. I miss everyone in Naples. I miss seeing my Naples family.
Brian, I did forget to mention something that, you know, I just take it for granted. I tend to get a lot of phone calls or emails or people reaching out to me so I can point them in the right direction, either point them to somebody like Melissa or to that, you know, telephone number for folks that may be struggling. That's not going to stop. I don't want anybody in our community to think, oh, she's busy and she's down there and she can't be bothered. The position that I'm in, and when I entered into this position, it was with a clear understanding that I would absolutely still be available to our Naples community through email, through phone calling, through you know, video, even these things. So I think next week, you know, maybe back to business as usual, Brian. Maybe we'll have a little bit different of a forum. Certainly if it's an emergency situation, I would encourage you, if I'm not getting right back to you, to reach out to somebody else. But I would like to hear from our community, probably more so now than ever before. So don't think that I'm busy and that I can't continue to help and point you guys in the right direction, because I can. So
You're getting a bunch of hearts, Brian, just so you know. So with that said, if there's nothing else, I'm going to do my normal sign off if nobody minds. And I hope that everybody is sick of hearing me say this. If you are, too bad. I'm going to keep doing it. But first of all, thanks again for joining us for the weekly discussion. And please remember, wash your hands, don't touch your face, avoid public space, be kind to one another, and look after your neighbors. Thank you all. Take care.